in different mediums. You can see the way I use fabrics. And it's actually an interesting one because at the time I was reflecting on the freedom I was feeling in the US. So that's me in 2023, and I was reflecting on my life back in Kenya and how I felt suppressed as a woman, both by societal norms and cultural expectations that are placed on me as a woman. So I did a lot of these in so many different ways. And then this is a paper from a paper that has been recently been published by Domitila Chesang, and these are the statistics of female genital mutilation. There's a direct correlation between gender-based violence, child marriages, bride price, and also female genital mutilation. Because in some of these cultures, and the numbers are shocking, this is not even from long ago. In some of these cultures, women are sold off as early as 10. When I was doing research, I came across this lady, her name is Nancy, and she fought against FGM from the age of 10 to 17. She said she would only be cut and sold off over her dead body, so she ran away from home. And these are some of the things she was telling her mother in the documentary. Like, you can't compare education to cows. You will milk education more than a cow. Of course, she was saying it in Swahili, so that's translated. So I took metal and I wrote it in liquid iron, and then rusted it, and I wrote the text of whatever she was saying on this metal. She said, backward research cycle, mother-daughter. Why was I using rusty metal? Because deep in these remote areas, they use unsanitary and unsterilized metal to cut the girls. Some of them end up overbleeding to death. I was able to contact this lady, and she has been giving me a lot of information about exactly what happens on the ground in her area. So I made this installation at the Orlando Museum of Art for the Florida Prize competition, which I ended up winning People's Choice. But I had this, thank you, I had this installation in the middle that said not for sale, and she was dressed in the words I wrote, and that's what it looks like. So it's a 17-foot tall installation that I built, inspired by how the Pokot women and some of these women in these pastoralist communities actually build their own houses. So I actually built this house at the museum, and it's a big one because it accommodates a lot of people inside. So people could sit around it and listen to poems that people wrote inspired by my work as well. But you can see it's very beautiful, enticing, and inviting. So people love to go into my work. It's very cozy, and then the colors and the way I make it is very attractive. But when you sit with it, you start noticing the uglier truths. I used Kuna Matata because a lot of Americans know Hakuna Matata, and they all misread that as Hakuna Matata, but that means worries. There is trouble if you're selling our girls at 10 for cows and goats. So I made this one that says Gereza Sikuta, and I was thinking we may not necessarily have to be in prison for us to be considered not free. So what does freedom mean to us? I like to change up my work. So the metal from her dress, it also became an outdoor sculpture that I recently had at another museum. So liberation and empowerment. As you heard me ask my question yesterday to Dr. Mutunga, I usually have fear of what am I doing sharing this research. I'm embarrassing my country. If you're having child marriages in these numbers, that's something we shouldn't even be proud of. But it's actually a global issue, and what reignited my research is when I watched the video of Miss Somalia 2025 recount how she was cut at the age of 7, and she said 98% of girls in her country are actually cut. And sometimes, as I'm saying, it's not even in a hospital setting. So it's really bad, and that's what encouraged me to reach out to the girl I saw in the documentary. So I also like to talk about empowerment and liberation, so I'm not just feeding one narrative. And by doing that, you can see how short I am. I like to put myself up there so that anyone looking at me has to look up to me, both metaphorically and physically, and that's elevating the woman. So this was at the museum, and you can see how much space I'm taking physically. so that you cannot miss my image if you're walking into that museum. And now it's not just about me, it's people like me and visibility. So I call this Hail Reverend Njeri. And a lot of these fabrics are shipped by my mother from Kenya, all the Kenyan ones, and then the rest are donated by women all over the country. All right, my inspiration. I grew up seeing a lot of bishops and church leaders were mostly men, and then like Nigerian king attires because I grew up watching Nollywood. Yeah. So I wanted to take that position of a woman, that position of power and authority. And this is another one I created. I will not go into this. I'm not sure how I'm doing in time, but she's actually a woman that you can walk into her. And it's very cozy and welcoming, that even though her face is bound, she still has the strength and fortitude to actually encourage you, to actually hold you. And people felt really, really safe. Safe is the word people say when they enter my installations. This is another one I recently had at another museum, and you can see it's the same thing. I am wearing this long gown, and then I am high up, I'm tall, so you have to look up to me again. And then it's almost like an altar where you have to go through and look up. And so I am thinking of how can I change the narrative? While I know I am highlighting issues like child marriages, how can I also highlight this other side of women that will create empowerment? And when some women see my work, they cry, they tell me it makes them feel safe, empowered, and liberated. And that is what I am going for. Oh, sorry. So these are some of my recent series. I use acrylics on fabric. I was thinking about reconstruction and reconstructing my identity, sort of like healing. So the act of me cutting up my own face after drawing it and then sticking this on fabric that's considered African, which is another topic of research, it is a symbol of me validating my identity as a woman in a cultural setting that is patriarchal. And there's another one in the series, and there's another made of black. Makes me think about colorism and how I grew up seeing all newscasters were always lighter skin and just so many things I saw on TV. So sometimes when I do my self-portraits, I am actually pitch black. And this is backlit because I'm also inspired by stained glass and church architecture. And so by backlighting myself, I become visible. And you can see the inspiration from like religious traditional paintings in Western European culture. So I am taking that place of being reverent, that reverential ritual where I'm hanging myself up in these spaces where people go and see me. This is another one I did, Vazi language and Langu, and I thought about the 2015 protest, My Dress, My Choice in Kenya. The one thing I wanted to do when I got to Kenya is wear booty shorts. So when I got to New York, I got booty shorts, wore them, and walked in the streets of Manhattan. And it felt like such freedom because in Kenya, I always had to wear stockings with dresses that are beyond my knees, or even not, and then I couldn't show my arms. So it was another form of freedom that I yearned for. And this may not seem like a big issue when you think of other bigger things like child marriages, but that's what I yearned for. To wear what I could wear while feeling safe. Because if you look at sexual assault cases in Kenya, even toddlers and 6-month-old babies are usually assaulted sometimes. You say they were dressed badly, so it's that blaming of the woman every time that I am trying to change. So this is from another exhibition, Ukombozi, Reclaiming Place and Self. A lot of these are solo exhibitions in different galleries, and you can see how I love taking up this space, and when the light comes in, it looks like stained glass. And these are more images. Fun fact, I got married to a white man. I told him about bride price, and he told me I will do anything that I need to do to fulfill your cultural traditions. And I told him we have this concept of bride price, but I will not and will never let any man pay for me. And because of that, I actually created this. My mother shipped this lesson to me that she has had since 2005. And you know how in Kenyan weddings, the women lay these fabrics on on the ground for the bride to walk on. So that was my symbol of rebellion. I painted myself naked, standing on the very same fabric that I was supposed to be stepping on after getting married. So I say no to bride price, and it felt really good. And my mother told me, it's not up to you, it's the village elders who have to decide. I'm like, I'm not going to let a group of men sit down and deliberate on my ward, because no man can buy me and will never buy me. So, so those are the things I think about when creating. And I've been having conversations with that girl from West Pokot and just seeing things happen in real time. Like she told me her neighbor was at danger of being sold off at 15